If you were somebody that was feeling sad because the S9 got features that all of your LUMIX bodies did not get, including the G9 Mark II, which is not here right now, but we've got the GH7, the S5 II, S5 IIX are now all getting the exact same features as the S9. So it's time to go update your camera. There is a couple things that are not available on the Micro Four Thirds version, but now the S9, the S5 II, and the S5 IIX will have all of the same features, which we're going to cover in this video. And I'm also going to give you some best practices when using the latest firmware for the autofocus on your S-series cameras. My name's Dustin, your video tour guide. Remember to keep your arms and legs inside your chairs at all times. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. So for this video, I'm going to kind of rapid fire all the things, if you don't know what's on the S9, what has been added to the S5 II, the S5 IIX, the G9 Mark II, and the GH7. Then after I cover those, I'm gonna show you what is new with the autofocus on the S5 II, S5 IIX. It's actually already been on the GH7, and I believe the G9 Mark II? I can't remember. And then I'm also going to cover a few different settings in the menu that you may not know what they do or what they mean in regards to autofocus. And then I'm going to tell you my best practices when using LUMIX's autofocus system to ensure that you are always getting perfect autofocus. Maybe not always, but we'll say 90% of the time, because no autofocus system is perfect. I just realized that this monitor's over here and I didn't want it there. Little alien antennas that you had peeking into the foreground right there. Lastly, these little autofocus nuances and settings are things that I covered in my LUMIX Pro course, at least in the photography section, that's on schedule, at least right now, to launch at the beginning of February. And so if you're looking to learn more about your LUMIX camera, my course is one of the best ways to do that. The one-time payment gains you lifetime access to a growing library of videos, not just what's already there. So if you're interested in that, I have a link down in the description. So first off, let's go over probably one of the most exciting features for a lot of you besides the autofocus system, and that is the new frame markers. You now have the ability to add 3 different frame markers. So I'm going to choose, let's say 16:9, and another very popular one is 9:16 or vertical aspect ratio. And then I'm going to set the frame mask to 75%, and I'll come back to this live view frame adjustment. And now you can see when I turn this on, there is 2 frame markers now. And then that frame mask also only masks out the areas that are not in either of the frames. So this is going to be awesome when you're shooting open gate and you need to deliver vertical and horizontal formats. And sure, you could set another one. Let's say we set a 1x1 square as well, because that's also pretty popular. And I'm going to change the color to red. And there we go. We've got a square 1x1. We got a 9:16 and a 16:9 frame guide. So what is this last little setting here? Live view frame adjustment. If I turn this on, I can actually touch the screen, and then I can drag and make that frame marker smaller. I can even move it left or right or anywhere on the screen. And then when I've found my spot, I can either toggle to the next frame by pressing Q, or I can click set and get out of the menu. But yeah, you can do this on any of the frames. So let's say you're framing, I don't know, like I see the use case of doing this, but I just not very used to having multiple frame markers. So I'm sure it's going to come in handy, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of you too will see this and be like, wow, I am very, very excited to use this, which I am as well. And then if you want to reset everything, you can just click the display button and it'll reset that frame. Press Q, and then I'm going to press display to just get everything back where it's supposed to go. Oh, and I guess I need to resize them correctly as well before hitting that. It's interesting that it doesn't actually reframe the size of it as well, but there you have it. That is the new frame markers tool on the camera. Sorry, I had to find a lens for this next setting, which is the hybrid zoom setting. Now this thing is highly underrated already, and I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to use the 28-200 to demonstrate this feature. So I'm going to go to the photo mode to demonstrate this, but this can be used in the video mode as well. You just can't do it in 6K. You have to do it in the 4K mode. Anyways, I'm going to go into the menu and I'm going to turn on hybrid zoom. Now watch this. The 28-200 millimeter now turns into a 28-624 millimeter lens. Crazy. So essentially it's just cropping in on the image in camera. I did use this feature a lot on my Japan trip and it was so handy, and it actually looks really good when it crops in. I was surprised at how much detail is actually not lost when you use this setting. And it does work in video, you just can't do it in 6K. You have to be in the 4K mode. I believe it works in 1080. Let's just see if it does. It does work in the HD mode as well for video. So you got to be in 4K or HD in order for hybrid zoom to work. But they also added the crop zoom mode as well, which is basically, it's similar to hybrid zoom, but instead of combining with the focal length of the lens, like as you zoom, it's just cropping in digitally on the image. So even just like a prime lens, this is useful for like a prime lens. You could essentially turn a 28mm prime lens into an 87mm lens. So this is super handy, not just for video, also for photos though. And I honestly think it's more handy for photo, but I can see it being handy for video as well. And I've already used it on the S9, and I just think it's a really cool feature to be added, especially hybrid zoom. It's really, really, really cool. Have I said cool enough? I don't think I have. Let's move on to the next thing. This one is the new MP4 Lite mode. Now, a lot of people are going to be like a little skeptical of this, right? Maybe the pros that might have this, an S5 II or an S5 IIX, they're like, I'm never going to use that mode. But it's a really nice option because it does OpenGate in 4K. So let's say that instead of shooting in 6K OpenGate and having a bigger file, you could just, if you're delivering it for social or for somebody's phone, you're getting the OpenGate file, right? You're getting it in 4K, and the MP4 Lite is meant to transfer those video files to your phone. It works really well with phones, and so this feature is really nice. I hope that they add more frame rate options. Right now there is only a 2997 frame rate option. I hope they add a 2398 option as well. But even just the 2997 option being there is really nice. And I've actually done some low light tests too to see how much more grainy this OpenGate mode is to the 6K mode. And I don't even notice a difference, to be totally honest. Maybe it slightly adds it, but yeah, very welcome addition as well to the S5 II, S5 IIX, also the G9 Mark II, and then G9 GH7. I forgot to mention, on the Micro Four Thirds cameras, the crop zoom feature is available, but hybrid zoom is not available on Micro Four Thirds. So that's the only thing missing from those cameras that is not coming in this update, and it's probably not coming in the future. I don't believe it's possible from a technical or hardware standpoint. So keep that in mind if you're on the G9 Mark II or the GH7. The next one that's really nice has to do with the LUMIX Lab app. This might be the reason that you quit using the LUMIX Sync app. I'm actually going to wait to add it on the S5 II so I can use it in the B-roll. But my S5 IIX is already connected basically right now, so you can control the camera as well. You can also monitor the camera. And one of the features that I thought was pretty cool that you can do is you can, if you're switched into the video mode and you want to take a photo really quick, you can switch to the photo mode from the software through the LUMIX Lab app, take a photo, and then switch back. And if, let's say you power down after you switch to the mode, it'll just power back on to the regular mode. You can transfer photos and videos. I think that was in the one, but you also have the remote shutter function. Yeah, all of the LUMIX Lab features that are compatible with the S9 are now compatible with G9 Mark II, GH7, S5 II, S5 IIX. Very, very, very exciting. So this is probably the portion of the video you've been waiting for, which is the autofocus features that have now been added to the S5 II and the S5 IIX. Now the S9, like I said, they all have the same autofocus now. So this is like a very unifying update. If I go click on my AF mode and click detecting subject, we now have train and airplane added all the way over on the end, and you have the different parts too that you can select as well. So you no longer have to cry and be sad that the S9 got all these features that the S5 II and S5 IIX don't have. This camera has essentially gotten everything that the newer cameras have gotten. This is why I love LUMIX, and I keep using LUMIX because it feels like when they don't have to compromise in regards to features and software, they don't. Obviously, I have an S1H. That's not an S1H. I have an S1H over there, and they are not getting any of these features because, well, they don't have the same autofocus system. And I don't know if compatibility will even be added on those cameras either when it comes to LUMIX Lab. Maybe. I could be totally wrong. I have no idea. Now let me get into explaining some of these autofocus features you should be aware of. As an example is the AF MF function. Some of you probably know about this. It's not really anything new, but just so you know, AF MF, when you have autofocus active, you can actually override the autofocus if it's not focusing where you want and focus where you need it to, and then let go, and it'll start focusing again. The reason why I don't really use that often is because I'm afraid that sometimes I may bump this, maybe more when I'm using the camera handheld. I'm afraid I'll bump it and it'll mess it up, but I don't know, maybe I should just try it out. But there's one to be aware of. Another one is the quick AF function. This is actually more of a feature for photos. When you're in the photo mode, basically what this is going to do is act like you're in continuous autofocus in the photo mode. So, you know, in photo mode, the autofocus won't trigger or start until you half press the shutter. In this mode, it will actually try and focus where it thinks it wants you to focus without half pressing the shutter. However, there is something you need to be aware of. If you are shaking a bit, quite a bit actually, you have to be pretty still in order for this to work. If you're shaking at all, then the camera will not focus. So if you're feeling like it's not working, well, it's because you're shaking the camera too much. Basically, the reason why this is more of a photo feature and not a video feature is because when you go into the menu and go into the focus menu for video, it'll say continuous AF. And if you have that set to mode 2, it says AF works all the time. This feature disables when you go into the photo mode. And so that's why this quick AF function exists. It'll essentially act a little bit quicker, but if you're shaking a lot, it won't. So be aware of that. Next is the eye sensor AF. Some people do get this confused with like, oh, the AF is sensing the eye. That is not the case. This just means when you raise your camera and look through the eyepiece and it senses you're looking through it, then the AF will also work. So again, another more photo feature than video feature, because in video you can have it active all the time. The next one is this looped focus frame. Some people don't really know what this is, but if you turn it on and then you tap the screen, if you have touch AF active, and then you move this box over to the right of the screen, essentially the box is just not going to stop on the edge and it's going to loop to the other side. So that's all that is if you're curious. I guess I'll just talk about this as well, which will lead me into the best practices when using autofocus. If you go into the photo mode and go to the AF custom setting and click that, you will notice that there's a bunch of presets for different scenarios when using autofocus in the photo mode. So you can play around with that in the photo mode if you notice you're not getting the results that you want. Now, as far as the video mode, when it comes to the custom setting, I personally leave it off because I think that the custom setting works best in most scenarios. What you could do as a best practice is you could look at what the photo mode's custom setting is, and you could try and mirror it for that scenario. Now, keep in mind that the steps are only by 1 to 2 increments in the photo mode, whereas in the video mode, they are way more. They're up to 5 steps. So just keep that in mind. If something's not working for you, maybe you are videoing a lot of like cars or motocross or trains or airplanes or maybe football, whatever. Try to mirror what the custom setting is to some degree. So you can play around with it, but I'm usually just filming humans. Now, let me go back to the AF setting, the detecting subject. When you're filming humans, I do not ever really recommend using the eye and face mode. The reason for this is because in the human detect mode, it's going to track your face and eye, and then if it loses the eye, it'll still track the face. And then if it loses your face, it'll track your body. But if you change this to the eye and face mode, this is kind of deceiving because it feels like that it's still going to track a human face if it loses the eye. This is not the case though. If you move left or right, whichever direction, and it loses the face or the eye, it will not be tracking you anymore. It will revert to just the full area tracking. So if I were to turn off the AF detection and it says full area AF, it will revert to that. So let's say that I did that and I turned this way, it's very possible that it'll focus on this mic if it's not tracking my face or my eye. So that is probably the biggest best practice that you should follow when using the autofocus system on any LUMIX camera. But then the only problem with using the human detect mode in large crowds, you'll notice that the camera can sometimes get a bit overwhelmed. You can toggle between different humans when there's a bunch of them by using the joystick, but the only problem I've found with that is that, let's say it loses that human that it is tracking, it'll just try and focus to the other human. And sure, you can go into the AF custom setting and set the AF sensitivity to be more locked on, but I don't know, I just find that I have much less control when that's going on. So I prefer in large crowds to use the one area plus mode. What this will do is put a little box on your screen, and if a human is touching that box, it's going to try and focus on that human. It's going to ignore everybody else and just try to focus on that one spot. Now, this is where I hope LUMIX changes this, because I feel like we really do need a eye only mode, like an eye detect mode only on LUMIX, because the face is kind of a big target. And what happens a lot of the times, let's say that my AF box, so as you notice right here, it's focusing on my hand, right? It's because it's tracking my whole body. I can see it from here, but it's focusing on my hand. If there was an eye detect mode, it would still focus on my eye. So if somebody's pretty animated while doing like an interview and you go like this in front of their face, it's going to track their hand. It's because that it loses the eye, right? There is a way around this though. If you are shooting an interview, let's say, you can turn on the focus limiter. When you turn on the focus limiter, you can essentially set a range for the camera to focus. Like if I were to lean forward, this is probably the furthest forward that I would lean. So I could set that to be my furthest distance that my focus will go. So then if somebody does raise their hand up in front of their face, it doesn't actually focus to their hand. It'll hopefully stay on their eye. Again, it's not ideal, and this is why I hope LUMIX in the next iteration, or maybe the one after that, but I hope that they change this or add just a eye-only mode. Because yeah, a good example of why this is annoying is because I shoot concerts, and the singers will be holding a microphone like this. And when they're holding the microphone, and I'm using the face and eye mode, even if it can see them, it'll try and focus on the mic right here. And it's like, I need an eye only mode to be focused on the face. And I'm sure that there's tons of scenarios that you can agree with where you would find that useful as well. Overall though, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything when it comes to this update. I gotta look at it on my computer. I did forget one thing. In the photo mode, there is also a new, what's it called? Picture size option. there is now a extra small option. So yeah, that's kind of a nice little feature. It's always nice to have more options. Like I mentioned, this is kind of like the unifying update for all LUMIX cameras that have been released in the past 2 years. And it feels really nice because, yeah, there was a lot of features on the S9. I love the S9, but, you know, my S5 IIX is still kind of my go-to camera for anything like professional. So sometimes like the hybrid zoom or the MP4 Lite or even the multiple frame markers that they added back in the fall, I was like, man, I wish I had that on my S5 IIX. Well, now we do. For me too, this new update, like unifying all of the new cameras in the past 2 years to basically do the same things, I feel like it's a sign that there could be something on the horizon. So guess we'll have to wait and see. I'll have a link in the description to go download the update yourselves, or I believe that you can update it straight from the LUMIX Lab app if you have your camera connected to your phone as well. So let me know what you guys think of the update, what you're excited for, and what your new favorite feature is, and if those autofocus best practices help at all. Remember to take a look at my course if you sound like that's something that interests you, and I'll have affiliate links to all these cameras down in the description as well. If you use those, that helps the channel a lot, so thank you. You can always support me just by hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified of future uploads. Till the next video though, happy filming.